I Dream of Jeannie may have been a wholesome comedy, but things weren't always swell behind the scenes. From Barbara Eden's midriff to Larry Hagman's unfortunate security notice, the show was anything but fun when the cameras were off. I Dream of Jeannie was created by TV veteran Sidney Sheldon. For inspiration, Sheldon looked to a film he had seen in 1964 called The Brass Bottle. Starring Burl Ives and Tony Randall, the movie tells the story of a put-upon architect who comes across an antique bottle. Convinced it's a fake, he decides against giving it to his fiancée's father, only to discover that the bottle holds an ancient and affable genie. The genie is so grateful to be released that he insists on turning his master's life around to near disastrous results. Upon its release, the brass bottle was panned by critics and largely ignored by audiences. It has picked up a few fans over the years, but Sheldon's refashioning of the basic idea with a vivacious female genie has long since outshone his inspiration. Besides the premise, Sheldon also took Barbara Eden from the film, who played the fiancée. Curiously, an earlier comedy had already brought audiences a gorgeous genie with a penchant for mischief decades before I Dream of Jeannie. 1945's 1001 Nights featured Evelyn Keyes as Babs, Aladdin's lovesick magical servant. And like Jeannie, Babs gets her man in the end, though not quite in the standard fairy tale ending.
Ask and it shall be given you, command and it shall be done.
In his memoir, The Other Side of Me, Sheldon had plenty to say about the creation and production of I Dream of Jeannie. In preparing the initial pilot, he got things off to a good start. Initial rehearsals had gone off without a hitch. On the day filming began, Sheldon went to his office confident that all was well. And it was, until director Gene Nelson threatened to quit. Sheldon rushed to the set to see what was the matter. Nelson told him that two of the leads, Hagman and Bill Daly, didn't know their lines. Furious, Sheldon confronted his actors, but the truth was a little more complicated. Daly, a veteran comic used to nightclubs and improvisation, was unfamiliar with scripted television. In Hagman's case, he knew his lines, he just wanted to embellish them. Sheldon was still unhappy. The tight schedule of TV production didn't allow room for actors to ad-lib. He told Hagman to stick to the script and arranged for Daly to get tapes of his dialogue to help with memorization. Sheldon also convinced Nelson to stick it out through the pilot. As a result, things quickly got back on track.
Thou hast set me free. That means that I am free to please thee, and I am going to please thee very much.
A favorite anecdote of the cast and crew of I Dream of Jeannie is that the censors didn't allow Eden to show her navel. 1960s television could only handle so much midriff, or so select members of the press thought.
What was so scandalous about the belly button?
I don't know.
But Sheldon was facing questions about the sexual content of I Dream of Jeannie well before the series needed a wardrobe department. In his memoir, The Other Side of Me, Sheldon wrote that he was so ready to pitch I Dream of Jeannie that he dictated an entire script instead of an outline. The pitch went well at the production company Screen Gems, and they brokered a deal with NBC almost immediately. Once Sheldon's script reached the network executives, however, trouble started brewing. Some of the staff at NBC felt the concept only amounted to one real joke. More seriously, the Standards and Practices Department found the idea of a beautiful genie living with her single male master scandalous. An 18-page memo from the department laid out various conditions, including a prohibition against Jeannie and Major Nelson from so much as touching one another. Sheldon cited contemporary sitcoms with similarly broad concepts to get around the one-joke complaint. He also told NBC chief Mort Werner that he wasn't planning a sexually charged program. However, Sheldon ignored the rules about touching from the very first episode.
Oh, my darling Anthony, you are so kind and understanding. And it is all wasted on me.
I Dream of Jeannie featured numerous guest stars in the course of its run. Sammy Davis Jr. made an appearance on the show, though he and Larry Hagman had a somewhat tense relationship between takes. Even comedians like Don Rickles and Milton Berle popped in and out. Groucho Marx also guest starred on I Dream of Jeannie, and he wasn't hard to get. After all, Marx and Sheldon were friends. Sheldon wrote in his memoir that Marx called him one day, complaining about the quality of talent on the show. According to Sheldon's memoir, Marx said on the call, "I know a guy who would be great. He's young and handsome and brilliant." When Sheldon asked who this mystery actor was, Marx replied, "Who else? Me." Marx made a brief appearance in the episode The Greatest Invention in the World, written a week after his call to Sheldon. He worked without pay, or at least without cash. As compensation, Sheldon gave Marx a color TV. For all the laughs it brought to viewers, I Dream of Jeannie wasn't the happiest experience for its male lead. As the son of famed Broadway star Mary Martin, Hagman had a chip on his shoulder about his own notoriety with the public. He resented not being the true star of I Dream of Jeannie. This, at least, is how Sheldon described the situation in his memoir, The Other Side of Me. To hear Hagman tell it to the Archive of American Television, he wanted the show to be as good as it could be and was prepared to argue for better scripts. His behavioral issues were to do with drugs, not ego. Hagman complained that episodes of I Dream of Jeannie kept recycling the same 4 basic plots, and that his efforts to recruit more writers went unheeded. While he was talked down from a threat to leave the series after the 3rd season, he did appeal to the head of Screen Gems, Jackie Cooper. If he had to keep doing the same scripts, said Hagman, he wanted 2 things: more money and a chance to direct some episodes. Hagman told the Archive, "It helped me a lot directing, because then you learn a different perspective about the overall picture. The person who creates a TV show isn't always responsible for running it day to day or for writing scripts. But by producing the pilot script for I Dream of Jeannie, Sheldon was its writer-producer. His deal with Screen Gems granted him his own production company under their name to manage the show. For a time, he worked 2 shows at once, flying from Jeannie production duties in Los Angeles to a job as story editor of The Patty Duke Show in New York. Besides managing I Dream of Jeannie's production, Sheldon wrote a lot of episodes. During the 2nd season alone, Sheldon wrote 38 episodes in a row, according to his memoir. Credits are vital to screenwriters getting work, but Sheldon grew self-conscious about the number of times his name appeared on I Dream of Jeannie's credit sequence. To work around this, Sheldon invented 3 pseudonyms and cleared their use with the Writers Guild. In the 5th and final season of the show, Jeannie and Major Tony Nelson tied the knot. The decision to get the 2 of them hitched was made by NBC, and the network brass were the only ones happy about it. Sheldon told the Archive of American Television, "I tried to explain that what kept the show going was the sexual tension between the characters, and that when they were married, that sexual tension would be gone." Eden told the Archive that she didn't like the idea. Hagman was sure the show couldn't work once they were married, and Bill Daly felt it completely changed the premise.
The ring. The ring. We don't have the ring. We don't. Roger, give me the ring.
Against all this opposition, NBC had a ready retort. No marriage, no 5th season. And so Sheldon and his cast reluctantly married Jeannie and Nelson off. The 5th season proved the last for I Dream of Jeannie, and Sheldon and Daly both blamed the network's ultimatum for the show's demise. I Dream of Jeannie wasn't the only popular series of the time to have a marriage coincide with its end. Get Smart suffered the same fate. A number of sitcoms from the 1960s had animated spin-offs the following decade, but Hanna-Barbera's Jeannie bore little resemblance to its inspiration when it premiered in 1973. None of the original cast returned to voice their characters, most of whom didn't appear at all. Only Jeannie herself returned, and she was almost unrecognizable, having red hair and Julie McWhirter's voice. Her new master and love interest was Corey Anders, a teenage beach bum with a like-minded sidekick. Jeannie also had a sidekick in the form of Jeannie in training, Babu.
I was on the moon!
Somehow, Babu, that doesn't surprise me.
According to Jeff Lenberg's The Encyclopedia of American Animated Television Shows, the radical shift in Jeannie's concept was due to the target audience. I Dream of Jeannie was made for adults, while the cartoon was made for children and teenagers. The series also gave a young Mark Hamill his first work as a voice actor, several years before he became known as Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Hamill voiced the role of Corey Anders, but Lenberg names Babu as the audience favorite, at least for the 2 brief years Jeannie was on the air. When asked why I Dream of Jeannie was canceled at the end of its 5th year, Eden told the Archive of American Television, "Lowly actors never know what's going on upstairs." She and the rest of the cast had no sway with NBC to affect the show's renewal or cancellation, nor were they given a specific reason for why it wasn't picked up for a 6th season. But in Larry Hagman's case, the lack of word from on high was so total that he and his agent weren't even told the show had ended. In Hagman's interview with the Archive, he said that he went on vacation to South America to visit his mother after the end of I Dream of Jeannie's 5th season. The trip lasted around a month. While he suspected the show wasn't going to last once his character and Eden's were married, he expected some sort of formal notice whenever things wrapped up. When he returned to Los Angeles, Hagman needed to fetch a few things from his studio dressing room. It was only when he reached the gate that he learned the series had ended, courtesy of the security guard. Like other sitcoms of its era, I Dream of Jeannie continued on after its cancellation with reunions, TV movies, and appearances by the cast on talk shows. Hagman initially took part in none of these. In her memoir, Jeannie Out of the Bottle, Eden claimed that Hagman had communicated to her that he wanted to put as much distance between the show and himself as possible. He'd moved on to the starring role of J.R. Ewing in the soap opera Dallas and was quite happy to be the leading man of his own series.
Never be fooled when I'm down. Because when I am, there's only one way to go. And that's up.
Eden had a short recurring role on Dallas as Leanne, a former lover of JR's, and worried about Hagman's reaction to being reunited with her on screen. It didn't help that her costume in her first scene was pink, just like what she wore on I Dream of Jeannie. But when Hagman first saw her before the cameras, he made a joke about traveling back in time. From there, he and Eden got along fine during filming. Hagman eventually began appearing at conventions and on talk shows in association with I Dream of Jeannie, with and without Eden. The two of them would act together again on the stage in a production of Love Letters.